Manchester United just beat Aston Villa 1-0 to win Erik ten Hag's most impressive 3 points this season. And I get it, we weren't playing a typical rival in Liverpool, Arsenal, or City, and this wasn't a big European cup, or cup tie that we had to win in order to advance to the next round. But this Villa team have been on something of a tear since Unai Emery took charge in October 2022. When Steven Gerrard was sacked, Villa were in 16th place on 12 points after 13 games played. Since then, Emery has won 13 games, 3 draws, 5 losses in 21 games to get 42 points on the board, which is the third highest amount of points, just behind Arsenal at 44 and Man City at 47. And the points total isn't even the most impressive part. When you look at their expected goals in that period, they should have scored only about 27 goals, but they're overperforming with 35. When you look at their expected goals against, they should have conceded about 30 goals, but they've only conceded 22. So according to expected points, which is a stat provided by Understat, go check it out, Villa have won 13 points more than they should have since Emery joined. So if that doesn't show you how good Emery is as a coach and how good this team have been since he took over, I don't know what will. So yeah, I was very impressed by the graft and determination that we showed as a team to win that game while keeping a clean sheet. So lots to talk about as always. Please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy. And don't forget to turn on all notifications to never miss out on content just like this. Now, since Emery came into this game to set up defensively and had about 40% possession for most of that game, let's talk about Villa's defensive setup really quickly before we get into United in possession. So Villa were defending in the 4-4-2 that you see here, but they were holding a really high line to play the offside trap against Rashford. The goal was to keep the team shape very narrow and compact to deny United any space in the final third. And in exchange, they were okay letting United have space in their defensive third and the middle third. So basically, this would force United to play long balls in behind to Rashford as really the only good option to create chances and score goals, because there was really no space to play through Villa in this compact shape. So keeping that in mind, let's talk about United's shape in possession before we get to how Erik ten Hag broke down Unai Emery's game plan. So United started in the 4-1-4-1 formation that we've seen Ten Hag use occasionally this season, but played in the 2-3-1-4 in possession that looked like this. In this shape, you had Rashford as the striker, Sabitzer playing as the second striker just in behind Rashford, then you had Sancho on the left-hand side holding the width, and Bruno on the right-hand side playing a bit more narrow on the inside so that he could get involved more on the ball in midfield. Then you had Malacia in behind the front four in a very surprising free roll just over here off the left-hand side, and we'll discuss more about this shortly. And behind Malacia in defensive midfield, you had Eriksen off the left, Casemiro through the middle, and Dalot on the right-hand side, with the two center backs holding just behind them. And as always, I have a clip from the first half to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. We start with Sancho playing the ball back to Eriksen, who's left of Casemiro in midfield like we just discussed. As we played along, Eriksen turns around to pass the ball back to Shaw, and you can see Malacia move back from his position in the front five into this area over here. So as Shaw receives the ball and contemplates what to do, we see the 2-3-1-4 shape in possession, where Shaw and Lindelof are furthest back. You have the midfield three of Casemiro, Eriksen, and Dalot. Malacia is in that free roll in the middle like we just discussed, and we have the front four of Sancho, Rashford, Sabitzer, and Bruno. What you can also see here is that Villa are holding a high line without actually engaging in a high press up front. So their team shape is really compact and narrow like we discussed, but they're not using that to their advantage in terms of pressing our ball carriers like Shaw, Lindelof, Dalot, or Eriksen. So United were in a unique situation where there was almost zero pressure in the defensive and middle thirds of the pitch, which meant that we needed some of our better ball progressors in these two areas. And that's why Eriksen almost always dropped from midfield into this area here on the left of Casemiro, which made room for Malacia to get forward. Other times, Malacia would actually drop into Shaw's position, which would allow Shaw to get into the Eriksen position, and Eriksen would get further forward. So there was a lot of positional fluidity in the back six positions for United in that game, and there was pretty much nothing Villa could do to exploit the out-of-position Malacia, who was playing as left center back, or the out-of-position Shaw, who was playing as the left back. Because like I said, they were not pressing high. Next, let's talk about how Ten Hag was able to beat Emery's tactics today and get the all-important 3 points. On paper, Unai Emery's plan to play the offside trap against United makes sense because Rashford is pretty much the only player who can run in behind, whereas Sancho, Bruno, and Sabitzer don't really have the pace to do it. And if you execute the offside trap properly, it really disrupts the attacking momentum of United and gives Villa more possessions in a game where they're playing away from home against a team that has been pretty good at home. But there are a few issues with it. It is a high-risk, high-reward plan because your backline pretty much has to get its positioning and timing of their movement perfect every single time. If either of these things are wrong even once, there's no catching Rashford on a one-on-one and he's likely to score against Martinez. The second issue with the plan is that Emery did not press United at all. With Shaw, Lindelof, Eriksen, and Dalot having tons of space in defense and midfield, they had lots of time to pick out their passes into the forward line. And all 4 of these players are pretty good with ball progression if you check their numbers over the season. So you'd expect them to break down any team pretty much with that much time and space over a period of 90 minutes. But even someone like Casemiro, who isn't traditionally the best long passer, was really good on the ball today. And for the United fans that are watching, we know that Casemiro has been struggling in the last few games, both on and off the ball. So I think Unai Emery really missed a trick by not pressing us high with the front 3 or 4 players. Because if you've seen United this season, we tend to make some mistakes when we get pressed high up the pitch. So considering all of these issues that I have with Emery's game plan, Ten Hag actually beat this by playing in a 2-3-5 at times in possession, where 2 midfielders joined the forward line and played right on the shoulder of Villa's defenders. And we have a clip here to show you this shape in action. We start with Shaw driving the ball up the pitch, and again you can see how there's almost zero pressure on the ball carrier in the defensive third over here, and you can see Shaw is kind of in the same line as Lindelof off screen, and Malacia, Casemiro, and Dalot, who's also off screen, are in the same line. As Shaw drives forward a little more, you can see how United's front 3 are joined by Eriksen and Sabitzer over here to make that front 5, and how all 5 of these guys are playing on the shoulder of Villa's back 4. So as defenders that are trying to play the offside trap, you're trying to pay attention to the ball carrier over here, because as soon as he tries to play the pass, you're going to step forward and get the other team offside. And you can actually see the 4 Villa defenders looking at Shaw over here because they're waiting for him to play that pass. But also as defenders, that's really difficult to do when you have 5 attacking players surrounding you, because you're bound to pay attention to their movement at some point and make a mistake. For example, one of the defenders could see the attacker closest to them, let's say this guy here, run past him, and then Ashley Young believes that the ball has already been played, so he steps out as well. And that one mistake could lead to the other 3 defenders believing that they need to move as well, or they stay still, and that automatically plays all of the United players onside. So there's a lot of confusion created when you put a lot of pressure on them to pay attention to, say, 4 or 5 players alongside the 3 other teammates that they need to pay attention to. So this tactic by Ten Hag to play the 2-3-5 was really difficult for Villa to deal with all game. And yes, our front 5 were offside a combined 6 times, but all Villa needed to do was make one mistake that led to 1 goal for United to beat this offside trap tactic by Emery. And that's exactly what happened, as we'll see from the goal next. We start with Martinez taking the goal kick up the pitch. As the ball gets towards Casemiro here, you can see that Villa are still holding a high line with Rashford right on the shoulder of the last defender. And pretty much the only mistake here is that Konsa is holding slightly deeper than the rest of the backline, but that's how small the margins are with the offside trap. As Casemiro actually wins the header here, Rashford spins in behind immediately, and the Villa backline are always second best from here to get back and stop Rashford. But more importantly, look at how Bruno and Sancho are both ahead of the Villa midfield. So if there's a second ball opportunity, the Villa defense is probably going to struggle against Bruno as he's running onto it. As Rashford gets further forward, we get a better idea of what I was just talking about, as the Villa center backs are marking Rashford here, these 2 guys, which means they will try to do whatever they can to either block his shot or get close to him and make it difficult for him to shoot. Which means Alex Moreno is pretty much the only one left to deal with an onrushing Bruno as soon as there's a second ball. So as Rashford gets further forward and gets in line to shoot. He shoots his shot, and Martinez is about to parry this away into this area over here. And you can see here how Moreno is just slightly in front of Bruno, which means that Bruno knows exactly where Moreno is and how far he is from the ball, but Moreno doesn't know where Bruno is. And this slight extra piece of information gives Bruno the advantage to win the ball, and that's exactly what happens for Bruno to score the all-important goal in this game. So you can see how that one mistake from Konsa, just being 2 steps behind Mings, basically cost them 3 points in this game. Now I want to highlight 3 standout performances from that game yesterday, starting with the most obvious in Casemiro. This guy has really been struggling in the past few games since he's been back from his second red card, and I know some of us have speculated that he's being tentative in his tackles because he's scared of picking up another one. But for me, he's been bad on the ball too, with poor first touches and passes, to the point where our attacks were really breaking down because of him. But in yesterday's game, he was on it. He's a sub 80% passer for his career, but yesterday he was at 86%. He had 76 touches, 9 passes into the final third, and 6 accurate long balls. He also had 4 tackles and interceptions, 2 clearances, and 7 recoveries. And he won 7 of his 11 ground and aerial duels, the most important of which was the aerial duel that sent Rashford through in the 39th minute and created the Bruno goal. We all know how important Casemiro has been to this team in the season, so I hope he can keep contributing like this till the end of the season because we have some really important games coming up. The next standout performance for me was that of Diogo Dalot. This guy has probably had the toughest season of any United player for several reasons. Number 1, he was under the spotlight at the beginning when we started off the season poorly, and along with Martinez, Varane, and Malacia, he got us out of a hole by putting in performance after performance after performance. Number 2, he got injured because he was basically playing every minute of every game for United, to the point where we all thought that Wan-Bissaka was actually going to be sold in the summer, and he also played all those games for Portugal in the World Cup. Number 3, that injury led to Wan-Bissaka coming into the team and performing really well at the same time that Dalot kind of fell out of form. Things got so bad at one point that some of us thought that Dalot should be the one that should be sold in the summer. But today, Dalot had a great game that might go underrated by some because he didn't really do anything that stood out in terms of assists and goals. He had 86% pass accuracy with 9 passes into the final third and 10 accurate long balls, which shows that he was really influential in playing in that defensive and middle third to try and beat the offside trap. He also had 82 touches, 2 successful dribbles, 3 tackles and interceptions, 4 clearances, 9 ball recoveries, and won all 5 of his ground duels. So finally, I think Dalot is looking like his old self, and I'm delighted to have 2 unique and top-class right backs at the club, because I think we can all agree that both Dalot and Wan-Bissaka are looking much better than they did last season, which is a result of pure competition. And finally, I want to talk about Jadon Sancho. You guys might be surprised by this one because he didn't really do anything specific that stood out in this game. He had 47 touches, created 2 chances, had 2 dribbles, and had 2 passes into the final third. But what impressed me is his fight, his spirit, and his intent that I've seen from him in not just this game, but for the last few games. He seems to have turned up his intensity off the ball, and it's making a big difference to the team as a whole. He attempted 2 tackles yesterday and won them both. He had 1 interception and 5 ball recoveries as well, and he won 5 out of 12 of his ground duels. And even on the ball, I think he has improved his decision making, and this is really important for Sancho because he isn't blessed with athleticism like Rashford is. Sancho's bread is really buttered by his ability to consistently make good decisions. And even Ten Hag seems to agree that he's doing well because he got 76 minutes in this game, whereas he usually gets taken off at the 60th minute mark. Much like Dalot and Casemiro, I think an informed Sancho bodes really well for United till the end of the season. Let's hope they can get going in the important games that are coming up. In closing thoughts, I think an underrated point about yesterday's game is that Ten Hag's starting 11 was very unique. I'm not sure we've seen this set of 11 players start together in a game before. In that 4-1-4-1 shape, we were able to squeeze in 4 midfielders in Eriksen, Sabitzer, Bruno, and Casemiro, which meant that we had a really strong bench to come on and impact the game in that second half. When the likes of Martial and Antony start, we look like crap because we bring on Fred and Weghorst off the bench. But yesterday we were able to bring on Martial and Antony to close out the game, and I was more confident in holding on to the 1-0 lead as a result. Look, I'm not saying that we should keep Martial and Antony on the bench so that we can bring them off. I'm just saying that it's good to see Ten Hag switch it up and play with a different formation in certain games, because it shows that Ten Hag knows how to rotate the starting 11 while still getting a win. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.